Welcome to this month's, or this week's, not this month's, weekly live stream. Uh, Nerd Uno, welcome. Blaine Darius, Gringos are us, Quebec Woodcraft. Welcome, Kai. I'd like to welcome everybody. We're going to talk about a subject today that I think it's kind of important to talk about because it's come out on the news a lot and stuff like that. I'm going to take care of a little bit of, just let a couple of more people get in because people kind of catch up and getting into the room. But I'm also, Blaine, welcome. I think I already said welcome. I'm testing out, I don't know if you guys knew about this, is that I've been streaming. Actually, I streamed a live concert event. I'm getting involved with a group of people that are doing streaming, and there's a person that's building a studio here that I'm kind of collaborating with. And one of the things that I'm doing is testing my streaming setup, and I have some cameras. So today I'm gonna use everybody as a test. This is a wireless camera that I have running downstairs, and this is my view out of my back patio. I can pan it over back and forth. I'm actually just testing out the camera, and tell me what you guys think about the quality of the picture there. Let me go back to me. And this is one of the cameras that I'll be using for doing live streams. What I might end up doing is putting one upstairs on the rooftop terrace and then see what it's see how it comes out. So what I want to do today is the reason why I brought this up, actually, instead of just a regular Ask Me About Mexico, is because some things kind of, I had a couple of situations pop up this week that really brought me to this subject, because it's a subject that I see a lot in expat Facebook groups, and I also see it a lot. I see a lot of arguments. I've seen a lot of articles about the gentrification of Mexico, but I'm going to present you with some. I think we need to look at an overall picture, because I think what has happened with all of this gentrification, expats moving in, entitled attitudes, all of these things have been kind of generalized or stereotyped. Not really general, I think more stereotyped than anything else. So what I'm going to do is I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to start by coming up with, I actually asked, talk about Gringos or Us, about the, what AI art am I using for the thumbnails? It's actually ChatGPT. It uses Dolly, which Nerd Uno was telling you about. I think ChatGPT integrated Dolly into it. So I have ChatGPT, so I subscription to it or whatever. So that's what I'm using to create these thumbnails. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to take everybody over into, hey, Two Travelers in Mexico and Cindy, welcome. I'm going to take everybody over to a screen here that I asked ChatGPT, what is gentrification? And we need to look at this. And the reason why I want to go over the definition is because I think we need to hit on some certain points on gentrification here in Mexico. Okay, so now let's read what is gentrification according to artificial intelligence, ChatGPT, the most, what everybody is raving about as far as artificial intelligence. But gentrification refers to the process of a neighborhood change that includes economic change in a historically disinvested neighborhood by the means of real estate investment and new higher income residents moving in, as well as the change in character and culture of the neighborhood. This process often results in the displacement of longtime residents and businesses. Gentrification is a complex and often controversial topic, as it can lead to improved neighborhood amenities, higher property values, and greater investment in public infrastructure. However, it can also result in increased rent and property taxes, which can be difficult for longtime residents, often from lower income backgrounds, to afford, leading to their displacement. This process can also lead to the loss of historical and cultural character of the neighborhood, creating tensions between long-term residents and newcomers. The term is frequently used in urban planning and sociology discussions, particularly in the context of debates about urban renewal, housing policy, and economic inequality. So that's the definition of gentrification. But I think what has happened in the expat community is we've kind of taken gentrification and not only that, but within the media, we've kind of taken gentrification of that term and we made it a general term, okay? And what I see a lot of, and the reason why I bring up gentrification is because when I see a lot of these arguments is that, I see people that get on a Facebook group and they'll complain. For example, just recently, and I think we need to dispel a lot of myths here. Maybe there is gentrification, but I think there's also a lot of myths that go along with it. But for example, and actually Gringos are us. This is the reason why New York City has rent control. Actually, Gringos are us, that's what I was going to bring up. Somebody made a comment in a Facebook group, I think out of Ajijic, that basically rents were going up and they couldn't believe it. What ends up happening a lot of times is expats get sold these ideas by YouTubers, by other people on Facebook, that they're going to come here and they're going to live like kings on a small fixed income. And it's getting harder and harder to do that. Now, I will tell you, you will have a better quality of life here in Mexico, regardless of how much you make, whether it's a small fixed income, a medium fixed income, or a medium income. You will have a better life here. I'm not going to argue that. You will have a better life here. But what I am going to talk about is that what ends up happening is that these people were complaining like, this is outrageous, rents are going up, blah, blah, blah. Well, the first thing that came across was, well, it's all these expats that are moving into Ajijic. That's what's raising the rent prices, which is true, okay? Then that turned into all of this stuff about Americans coming here, and then all of a sudden, well, everybody, this is America too, and it turned into a mess. And one individual started arguing with my wife because he started saying, or I think it was he started saying, well, you know what? If it wasn't for us foreigners, we wouldn't, your kids wouldn't be educated, because my wife's Mexican. So your kids wouldn't be educated. The economy, if we all left tomorrow, Mexico would go broke. And that's not true. And I need to explain something here. And then, of course, he got a lot of stuff like, oh, you're just an entitled, this is a condescending attitude that many expats come with. It's this attitude of, we support Mexico. Mexico wants our dollars. I even believe several YouTubers have even made that comment. Mexico is hungry for your dollars. And the thing is that what we don't understand is, I'm going to give you a couple of statistics here. The comment that an individual made was, if we all left, and he even said, let me put it this way, no gringos, no jobs. That's what he said. That's why I put that in the title. And here's the reality, okay? And I'm going to tell you the reality about gentrification. Yes, we've seen news articles about neighborhoods in Mexico City. Actually, even here in Mexico, there's been news articles. There's been news articles about how some neighborhoods in Mexico City have been taken over by foreigners, and how the rents and the greediness of the landlords where it's unsupportable. Yes, we have pockets of what we would call gentrification by this definition. But is Mexico being gentrified? The truth is, not really. And I'm not here to defend the expat community, but I'm here to give you a little bit of a lesson. And I think we need to have a discussion about this. And this is the reason why I say not really. We have a lot of misconceptions, and we come here with our culture, and sometimes we don't even realize, sometimes we're insulting. Even when we're trying to defend the culture here, we actually insult the culture here. So I think I want to get into that. And the first thing I want to say is that, this individual said, well, there's several million, I don't know how many million North Americans that live here, blah, 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 blah. Well, that's a lot. And I've heard other tourism and foreigners bring in over $10 billion. Well, $10 billion to an economy as large as Mexico is like saying, it's like comparing $5 to $1,000. What you're doing is, let's say rent costs $1,000, and I say, well, I'm bringing in $5. $5 compared to $1,000 is nothing. What you bring into the Mexican economy only accounts, and I'm telling you right now, what foreigners bring into the Mexican economy is only 5% of the total GDP. 5% out of 100%. 95% of the total GDP in Mexico, the economy, is not tourists, is not Americans, it's not Canadians, it's Mexicans. That's what it is. It is what it is. It doesn't matter how many $1 billion you bring in, how much it is, but it's 5%. And let me tell you something. Out of that 5%, 90% of that 5% is tourist income. It's not expats. It's tourist income. Then you take that tourist income, if you take the whole, and then I've heard the thing, all the tourists, we make up all the tourists in Mexico. Well, let me tell you something about tourists in Mexico. And tourism in Mexico is not supported by foreigners. It's actually in Mexico, 50% of tourism, 50% of tourism is actually Mexicans. Not all tourism is foreign. Go to Playa del Carmen. We talk about Cancun. Go to Playa del Carmen. A lot of people don't realize that 50% of those tourists are actually from Mexico. They're not foreigners. We tend to hang around. Most of us, we go to a resort where everybody else goes to. It's a tourist resort. But there's a lot of resorts that cater to Mexicans. Let me tell you what also happens here. I can tell you right now, I live in a neighborhood. There's only 2 Americans that live in this neighborhood. And I live in a very nice neighborhood. Every single house in this neighborhood is a vacation home for somebody from Mexico City. So when you try to say that San Miguel de Allende has a very large foreign community, very large. Do they contribute to the economy? Yes, they do. But will San Miguel de Allende fall apart if all foreigners left? No, it won't. Because there's plenty of Mexican, as a matter of fact, there's plenty of celebrities, Mexican celebrities that live here. So, that's what, I am trying to get across here. Yes, are there I went to Ajijic. Most of the businesses, I'm telling you, restaurants were owned by Canadians or Americans. Not even Mexican owners. I saw nothing. I heard nothing but 19% English being spoken in Ajijic when I was there. Okay, Ajijic is only one town in all of Mexico. So, you know what? And here's the thing. don't patronize yourself because, oh, well, I live with and that's the other thing too, is everybody gets on me on that one, is I live with the locals. I live in the local community. So somehow that makes me better than all you expats that live with other expats. You're not better. Nobody's better. And we need to get rid of this condescending attitude, because even the people that try to defend Mexico end up being condescending to the people that are complaining about Mexico. Instead of, why don't we educate these new people? Hey, Sedona, how's it going? Why don't we educate these new people about Mexico? Instead of being condescending and telling them, well, you're just a Karen, you're self-entitled. Well, you know what? Self-entitlement, I hate to say it, is part of the American culture. That's just the U.S. culture. I don't know about Canada. I can't speak for Canada. I'm not sitting here and I'm not going to condescend, but it's a stereotype. And it's just kind of, and I'm going to give you an example. I'm Hispanic. I speak Spanish. I'm half Mexican. I'm married to a Mexican woman. So, I'm kind of as Mexican as you can get, kind of sort of in an expat sense, right? And we were at La Comer the other day, and I decided that I was going to put my ATM card into the my debit card into the to pay. Well, the terminal wasn't working, and they had to reboot the terminal, and I was just sitting there, and there was a lady behind us that, the lady behind us said, I had to wait here 5 minutes. And she was saying this in Spanish. And can you just, cancel these people's transactions? She wanted them. We had bought a whole basket of groceries. And she wanted the cashier to cancel our transaction, take care of her, and then redo our transaction again. And so I got I wanted, poor lady, she was kind of condescending to the lady. And so I'm sitting there thinking, I'm going to defend the cashier. So I tell the lady in Spanish, because she was speaking Spanish, she looked Hispanic. And I said, look, it's the chip and the card. And she looked and she spoke back to me in English and said, hey, Henry, how's it going? She looked back to me in English and said, I know. And I said, well, then, welcome to Mexico. I made that comment. And my meaning behind it was, hey, man, you're not in your country anymore. So you know what? Stand in line, right? And my wife looked at me. She didn't say anything. And she goes, well, it happens in the United States too. And then I said, well, then you shouldn't be surprised. And we walked off. And my wife says, do you know how insulting you just were? And I'm like, how could I have been insulting? I was sticking up for the cashier. I was sticking up for the, hey, they're in Mexico now. She said, no. Welcome to Mexico is an insult to the Mexican people, because you're basically saying that Mexico is, their systems are screwed up. You're actually insulting the Mexican people. And I didn't realize it. I did it subconsciously. And, I said, you know what? You're right. I should have just said, lady, stand in line. It's not your turn, right? That's bottom line. But we get caught up in this. I need to defend, I'm going to defend. It's not about defending the Mexican people. It's about assimilating to the culture. And Mexico City, let me tell you what, it's come out in the news. I even think local residents even put up signs, Gringos go home. It's become a big thing on the news. But you got to understand that Mexico City is one of the largest cities in the entire world. And you're talking about one neighborhood out of Mexico City that's, quote, quote, been gentrified. And some people have taken it. As a matter of fact, I even get upset when I don't know how many times I say the word expat. People say, I'm not an expat, I'm an immigrant. I'm an immigrant, I'm not an expat. No, you know what? You're a foreigner. Bottom line, it doesn't matter what you call yourself. And I've already gone over this. You call yourself an immigrant, call yourself an expat, call yourself a visitor. You know what? We're all human beings. You're a foreigner that comes to this country to live here. And calling yourself an immigrant doesn't make you any better than calling someone that calls themselves an expat. Calling yourself an immigrant doesn't make yourself better than anybody that's calling themselves a foreigner. So we need to get away from that. And we need to help each other. And we also need to assimilate into the culture. Someone made a comment to me not too long ago is that, and this is very, and actually he's from the United States. He says, you know what the problem here in San Miguel is? He said, everybody wants to bring the United States with them when they come here to San Miguel, and they don't realize that they're in a different country. And you know what? There's some truth to that, but I also think that we have the responsibility to let people know that, yes, you're in a different country, but because, and then here's the other thing too, those people complaining about rent, like, oh, my rent's gone up. Oh my God. Well, it's called supply and demand. Everybody else is coming here. You've been here 3 years. Someone else is coming here. They want to pay more money. Your rent goes up. What right do you have to be here over the person that just got here? Both of you are coming here to live in Mexico. It's not even your country. What gives you a right? You know, I can complain. My rent went up. My taxes went up. But what gives you the right to tell another person, don't come because my rent's going to go up because of you and it's your fault? Well, rents go up, then find another place to live. I mean, that's the bottom line. And that's the truth. Instead of telling people that you're the reason, it's your fault, go home. I mean, we're guilty of that in the United States. How many times do we tell immigrants, go home? Or how many times do we tell immigrants, you're in the United States, speak English now? Hey, Jay Gomez, how's it going? And you guys, everybody needs to understand, you know what? Prices are going up, yeah. But at the same time, you're going to live a lot better here than you are back in the States. And inflation, from what I've seen, and I've been in one of the most expensive cities, Monterrey, inflation, let me put it this way, yeah, I'm going to tell you, it's costing 1,000 to 2,000 pesos more to fill up my grocery cart. But I'm telling you what, when I go back to the United States, it costs me double that. And I have been back to the United States where I've had to buy groceries. And so I'm going to get through this discussion because, I mean, I'm not the only one that talks here. And I know a lot of people have some good insights here. And you know what? I agree. Sometimes people get a little greedy. Sometimes landlords get a little greedy. Hey, I can make extra money. And Gringos there, sometimes rent goes up because owners are fearful that low rent will bring destructive, careless renters. That happens in every country. Yes, rent goes up, and that's the thing. You know, it rent does go up because a lot of times it's going up in the United States. It's getting unbearable, actually, to be honest with you. And rent is going up because, hey, you know what? The economy's not as good anymore. It's going up in the U.S. too. I don't want someone that can't afford to pay the rent. God forbid I get a renter in there that doesn't pay. And landlord laws over there, to evict somebody is almost impossible. You know what I'm saying? So, you know, I want to be more careful. I'm going to be more selective. I'm going to charge more. That's very true. That happens in the U.S. too. Foreigners don't always assimilate. They usually want to be around folks from their own country or around folks who speak their language. And you know what, LB girl? I don't have a problem with that. I'm not saying, there's nothing wrong. Here's the thing. When you go to live somewhere, you want to go and live wherever you feel comfortable. Hey, TT, how's it going? What we need to do is what I want to get at here is, and actually I got into an argument with another, actually I didn't even realize she was a YouTuber, and she was talking about, I think, customer service. And I got into an argument that, you know what, this is what you signed up for. She's a very famous YouTuber. I didn't even know I was going to be, and her husband got deported, and I guess she does a YouTube channel. And I started telling her, hey, you know what? Customer service here isn't very good. That's what you signed up for, blah, 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 blah. And she made a good point. She said, hey, I don't want to get, I didn't have a choice. My husband got deported. I came here and, I was dealt these cards, and I have to put up with it, and I have to deal with it. And I have, I don't want my children to lose their U.S. heritage. And I said, no, there's nothing wrong with losing your U.S. heritage. There's nothing wrong with hanging around other people that you're comfortable with. There's nothing wrong with being in an expat enclave. What I'm telling people is, if you're not in an expat enclave, don't put yourself above someone that does live in an expat enclave. Where I want to live where I want to live. I have a right to live where I want to live, where I feel most comfortable. If I feel most comfortable around other expats, then who has the right to judge me? That's my point. And, markets adjust. Rents might go down. People, you know what? When rent gets as a matter of fact, some of those neighborhoods in Mexico City, believe it or not, rent has gotten so high. Guess what happened? People started moving away. They started seeking other locations in Mexico to live in. So that will probably drive the price of rent down. I don't know. I haven't kept track of that, but I know a lot of people have had problems. And they just said, I'm out. I'm out, and I'm out of Mexico City, and I'm going to find another city that's more affordable. Cubic, the rent created a problem for Mexican. They are kicked out to rent it to foreigners twice more. Yes, exactly. And I'm going to tell you, Quebec Woodcraft, that is true. And especially in places in very largely populated expat communities. That's true. Landlords get greedy. I'm not saying that individuals don't get displaced, okay? But what I'm telling people is that, and this is not, I'm not saying that it's right, okay? But I'm talking about, we come from, for example, in the United States, we call ourselves capitalist. This is the big thing, that capitalism. Well, you got to think about it. Capitalism lives in Mexico too. And capitalism isn't nice when it comes to things. Capitalism isn't nice when it comes to the price of goods. Capitalism isn't good to people when it comes to the price of rent. People in the United States are seeing the price of capitalism. Am I saying capitalism is bad? No. But what I'm saying is that you need to understand that, hey, capitalism, that's the result of it. Somebody's being a capitalist. They're saying, hey, I can get more rent off a foreigner. And I'm not saying that that's right, but I'm also saying that it's not the foreigner's fault necessarily. And I'm not saying that's number one. And number two, I'm saying that if you go and you want to defend those people that have been displaced, or supposedly you live in that place of the people that's been displaced, that doesn't make you any better than the person that lives in the place that displaced them. And that doesn't give you the right to put them down or tell them that they're just, I don't know, whatever it might be. What we need to do is we need to learn how to live with each other. And that's the point I'm trying to make. And this does sound like I'm kind of, defending the Karen or defending I'm not defending anybody. But what I'm trying to tell you is in an effort, a lot of times when you get in a Facebook group and you want to argue for the local people and the local economy, sometimes you end up being very condescending. My wife, she has a master's degree in here in Mexico from one of the finest universities, Ivy League. And I don't know how many times people look at my wife and it's like, oh, well, actually, even when she was working with a three-letter agency, they used to ask her, oh, do you clean houses? I mean, there's stereotypes. And then what happens a lot of times is these stereotypes carry over. So even when you're trying to, oh, I'm going to defend the Mexican people because I'm so proud to be here in Mexico. When you defend the Mexican people, just like I did the other day, I actually insulted the Mexican people. You're not defending them. The way to defend the Mexican people is to, and that the way to defend the Mexican people is to try to help out, take part in community service, do all of those things. This individual in Ajijic was like, oh, we do all these things. We educate your. You know what? Out of the expat community, I don't think only maybe 1% actually does community service. And we need to take part in these programs. It's the people who lived in that area all over their lives are now being displaced, and it's not fair to them. It isn't to travelers, and I have to say, but I also have to say there's another side to that story. There's a lot of individuals that locally live there that have taken advantage of those prices going up and have displaced their own people. And this is a serious issue. Okay, I'm not saying it's not, but what I'm trying to say is that we go into it with this kind of idea that all Americans are displacing Mexicans. All Americans support the economy. I mean, not Americans, North Americans, because I'll get into trouble for that, for saying America, because we're part of the Americas in Mexico. But, what I'm trying to say is that what people don't realize is that Mexico, and you need to understand this because it comes from both sides, from those that defend Mexico and those that think that supposedly they're supporting Mexico and everybody wants your dollars. The foreign population here in Mexico only makes up 1.5% of the total population in Mexico. I don't care how many million American, U.S. citizens. I don't care how many European citizens, Australian citizens, Canadian citizens. Millions and millions, it's a lot. It sounds like a lot, but it's only 1.5% of the Mexican population. So when you go with an attitude that we support, and you know what? Maybe Ajijic's going to have some financial problems if all the foreigners moved out. But guess what? The Mexican people, they'd move back in and life would go on. You're not the reason why Ajijic is successful. And that's the attitude you need to get away from. Cancun is not successful because of all the U.S. tourists that go there. Cancun is successful because they have a tourism economy. Cancun, but 50% of it happens to be Mexican. And so somebody say, no gringos, no jobs, you're far from the truth. Because if all the gringos left, there'd be plenty of jobs. Because the economy adjusts. You're only 1.5% of the economy. So I'm not talking against, and we can debate this. But, and here, let me see here, and I don't want to keep going. I want to get to people's comments here. We didn't have rent increases, and it's probably because we get along great with the owner. We had a lot of people who rent from locals, and renting is reasonable, even in Ajijic. Yeah, renting is reasonable. It's still reasonable. What I see in a lot of things is that people come with, and I always talk about the expectations. The expectations of, oh, I'm going to come here and rent for $500 a month, and I'm going to get a 4-bedroom house and everything else, just like this YouTuber said or I'm going to be able to live on, this YouTuber in Merida lives on less than $1,000 a month, and he lives in a house, so I'm going to get this big house. It doesn't work that way. Your expectations. But let me tell you something. Even in San Miguel, I'm talking about a $500,000 house, probably rents for an average of $1,500 to $2,000 a month. That's still a lot more affordable. And I'm not talking, I'm just giving you a comparison here. But that is still $2,000 a month. Somebody tell me where you can get a 2-bedroom apartment in places like Austin, Texas, New York. Tell me where you can get an apartment for $2,000 a month. I mean, we're talking about apartment compared to a house, 4 bedrooms. Where can you get that? So in Mexico, you still are getting more bang for your buck. It's just about expectations is what I'm saying. We hear you. Like anything else, there are 2 sides to every story. We personally make it a point to respect the locals and speak to them respectfully. We observe different behaviors. Yes, and you know what, Alberto? If you respect the locals, you try to speak Spanish, you understand, you get along. That's what this is about. It's about getting along. My thumbnail, it's 2 people arguing, and actually you could say it's the Mexicans arguing against the foreigners. And you could also say it's the foreigners arguing against each other. There's no reason to argue. That's my point. And there's no reason to defend Mexico. Mexicans can defend themselves. You're not better than anyone else because you're defending Mexico. I defend Mexico, but I defend Mexico by saying, adjust to the culture, don't complain, understand. That's where I come from. Every country has different things. Just like you go back home. It's very different living in New York City than it is in living in California. Different than LA, than some small town in Ohio. What's the difference? If you move from Ohio to LA, you're going to move to a big city. It's going to be a big change, a cultural change, regardless. So coming to Mexico is no different. It's going to be a cultural change. It's about adjustment. It's about embracing the adventure. And like I always say, I want everybody to be the 50% that doesn't leave, the 50% that's not complaining, the 50% that's like, oh, all these Americans came in and ruined this. That's what you hear on Facebook. Ruined my best kept secret. Well, your best kept secret? Well, I guess the cat is out of the bag. And what gives you more right? That's what I'm trying to say. We're all equal here, including the Mexican people. We can't be condescending to the Mexican people, just like we can't be condescending to each other. That's what my point is. Love living in the country with almost all Mexicans around. Our landlord is amazing. Malarkey, exactly. That's the attitude to have. Whether you live in an expat enclave, whether you don't, that's not what's important. What's important is that you all get along. And you know what? And I told this YouTuber when I said, she said, I don't want my kids to lose their language. I said, you know what? Actually, your kids are going to have more, if you're raising, I said, don't, I never sold you for them to lose their U.S. culture or whatever. As a matter of fact, your kids are going to be bilingual. Your kid, you're making it a point to keep them speaking English, and they're going to speak Spanish and English. Do you know the opportunities that your kids are going to have? Look at it in that way. And there's nothing wrong with coming to this country and saying, I want to keep my culture. I want to keep my language. But like they say, when in Rome, do like the Romans do. Oh, and also I got in the last live stream, someone corrected me. It's Toto. We're not in Kansas anymore from The Wizard of Oz. That's my point. As long as you realize you're not in Kansas anymore, then you'll be fine. Oh, wow, Ramon. Looks like I'm finally starting my minivan adventure in January. Awesome. Oh, I really like the visuals. Except for the purple text. Actually, I think it's the text, the the purple. Are you talking about the chat? Because that I don't have a choice. I think the chat. It's a thing that like a plugin that I use. Uh, and the red text, I have a hard time with these thumbnails. The one on the title, I have a hard time. Quebec, I was just stating facts. No, I understand that, Quebec. It is a fact. It is a fact that people are getting displaced. I'm not trying to argue against that. But what I'm trying to say is, for example, if you go to places like Monterrey, Mexico, you go to other places that aren't very highly expat populated, you don't see displacement. That's what I'm trying to say is that we take these facts, and these are facts. You go to a place like Ajijic, you go to a place like, oh, even San Miguel, probably many people have been displaced out of their houses in the central. Um, Many people have to live outside the city, many communities outside. Many people have talked to me about San Miguel the way it was many years ago. It's changed. Yes, I'm not going to say that it hasn't. And certain places in Mexico City, it's people have gotten displaced. Um, but the thing that I'm trying to explain is that there's also facts too that that's in 1.5% of all the population in Mexico. 1%. So is it really as big of a problem as we put it out to be? Yes, it is a problem in certain places. It's very isolated, is what I'm trying to say. Many times we don't get outside of our comfort zone of where we are. I would probably think that many people in Ajijic would either have the attitude, many expats, probably very, very, very expat in Chapala. Some have the argument that we support this whole community. We're the reason why this whole community even exists. Other people argue at, well, you drove all the Mexican locals away. But what I'm trying to say is, it is what it is. Um, and neither one of you are right in a sense. And I'm trying to say this, and I know I'm saying a lot. A lot of times I say what people don't want to hear. But are you right that you hold up the economy in Ajijic? Not really, because if you left, guess what? Mexicans would move back in, and it would be a town just like any other town in Mexico that doesn't have expats. There's plenty of pueblos mágicos that don't have any expats or have a very minimal amount of expats. Are you right that people have been displaced? Yes, you're right. But at the same time, who are you better than the person that displaced them? You're living there too. You're taking advantage of this too. You're living in the same place all these expats are too. Then why don't you go home along with all the other expats if that's your thinking? Do you see where I'm coming from? We often try to make these arguments and come up with all these facts when we're just as guilty. And that's what I'm telling you right now. I was just as guilty. By saying, welcome to Mexico, I'm just as guilty as the person that is entitled or the person that was right behind me in the line expecting to be treated differently because they were a foreigner. I'm just as guilty. And that's all I'm trying to get at. CMT, we have found that treating our home well and being willing to fix things or upgrade for creature comfort instead of demanding a consigliere service from the owner is best. Yeah, you know what, CMT, that, and also we've done that when we've had to rent and stuff like that, because it's easier, and then they also appreciate that. We have many friends with locals by attending Saturday football games. That's awesome, CMT. See, that's the thing that you need to do. And you know what? And here's when I talk about getting into the culture. Um, I talked about an expat fatigue. You know, you can meet new friends. Uh, how many people tell me there's nothing to do here? There's nothing to do. You know, you can only walk to the central so many times. Make friends. You know what? And if you only feel, I mean, here's the thing. I've made a lot of Mexican friends, but I made a lot of friends from all over the world here in San Miguel de Allende, not just Mexico. Australian. I have one of my real good friends is Australian, Austria, uh, New Zealand. I have a real good friend from New Zealand here. So you meet people from all over the world. We need to get out of our, oops, I'm sorry. We need to get out of our little bubble here. That's what I'm trying to say. So at Mexico, exactly. Complaining isn't something goes away when you cross the border. Those who do it will do it anywhere. Yeah, and I get it, Mal. They're going to complain, but here's the problem that I see is those people that don't adapt and continue to complain. When there's been some statistics that over 50% of foreigners leave within the first 5 years of moving here, and they say that 50% move back. What I found is those that complain are the same people that move back. And those that stay that keep complaining are the people that can't afford to move back. They just can't. I mean, it's unsustainable to even move back. So that's where we need to sit down and say, okay, I am where I am. If I'm in a position where I can't move back, then you know what? Let me figure out how to make the best of it. If I'm in a position where I want to move back, then you move back. But at the same time, you won't move back if you embrace it. And Mexico, I don't drink. Yes, we all are still, and even now, blessed to be here in Mexico. Try to live this way, even with rising costs in the USA. Respect our Mexico, and we are foreigners in. Yes, I totally agree. That's what we need to do. Is we need to respect our. One thing that I've always said, and I get into a lot of it with these everybody on Facebook and YouTubers that, oh, come to Mexico without financial solvency, get around the rules, run to the border every 6 months, and everything else. It's all about how to get around the rules and everything else. But the bottom line is that we don't need to get around the rules. What I tell people is that, or I don't know. Not too long ago with this big thing that came out that all you have to do is show that you're retired and you can get your residency. No, this doesn't work that way. It's not what you think is the affordable living. It's what the consulate thinks. But the point I'm trying to make is that being a resident here, getting residency here, no matter how you got it, regularization, financial solvency, it's a privilege, not a right. I'm going to repeat this. Living here in Mexico is a privilege, not a right. And it's just the same in any other country. A person that goes and gets permission to live in another country as a resident, or maybe even get naturalized later and get citizenship later, that's a privilege that's given to them, not a right. So when you go down to the consulate and say, I make this much money, I meet the financial solvency requirements, you got to give me residency. And I don't know, consulate officer's having a bad day, didn't have his copy, and says, you can't come in. Sorry. Well, guess what? You can't come in. because it's a privilege, not a right. You can complain it's not fair. Now, not everything in life is fair. I mean, that's the bottom line. I mean, if we lived in a fair society, I in these 58 years that I've lived, I don't think life has ever treated me fair. I just have to take whatever comes to me and make the best out of it. It's about taking lemons and making lemonade, or whatever that saying goes. It's a turning wheel. Since the rent goes up, the construction guys will ask for bigger salaries. So the house construction costs will go up also. Yes, actually, that's what happens. But can I tell you something, Quebec Workcraft? And I'm not arguing with you. Do you know how much a construction worker makes here in Mexico? Now, I have said they make a good salary, but for the amount of work that they do you know how much they make? Do you know how much a person that cleans a house makes? I'll give you an example. I have a house back in Santa Fe that we were selling. You know how much it costs to call a housekeeper in Santa Fe, New Mexico, to clean your house for one day? $200. You know how much it costs to pay a housekeeper here in Mexico to clean your house for a whole day? And that's if you're paying her extra? Probably 500 pesos, it would be at 17 to 1. A little bit more than $30. And that's paying them well. That's not paying them what most Mexicans pay. $30 compared to $200. And then, of course, you could probably argue, well, the cost of living in New Mexico is higher, blah, blah, blah. And the cost of living here is lower, blah, blah, blah. Yes, the cost of living here is lower, but the salaries for people working here has not caught up. And I'm going to tell you right now, it hasn't caught up anywhere in the world. So is it bad for a construction worker to ask for more money if building or cost of living is going up? It's the same thing with minimum wage back home. As a matter of fact, the minimum wage here in Mexico, it's been kind of ruining the financial solvency requirements. The minimum wage here in Mexico has been going up 20% a year. It's gone up this last presidency. The minimum wage has gone up higher than it's ever gone up in any presidency in the history of Mexico. And the reason why is because minimum salaries were way behind. And you know what? The reason why, I'll even tell you, I'm thinking maybe, you know why the financial solvency requirements are still tied to the minimum wage? Because you got some old timers here still thinking that the cost of living has to do with the minimum wage. And it's ruining the formula, which is requiring people probably next year for temporary residency close to $3,600 or $3,700. And if the regularization program goes away, or you've never been to Mexico before 2022, you can't even get residency. So, you know, that's the reality of being here in Mexico. Mel Larkey, respect is number one. Learn the language. Don't be lazy. Sorry since being here, I met people who have been here over 15 years and still haven't learned the basic Spanish. Yes, that's true. And basic Spanish is that's part of respecting the culture, but we also need to respect each other. I want to bring that up because I have never seen a more brutal. I have never seen more brutal people on Facebook, expat Facebook groups than any other Facebook. All the other Facebook groups I belong to, I've never seen people be so brutal. Also, I've never seen people be so brutal in the comments on YouTube to YouTubers. I don't know, just because, I don't know if it's just that people just are miserable or what, but I mean, okay. You want to be mean, but I've never seen it worse than people, the expat community. And that's what I'm trying to change here. There is Henry Liston. There is a saying: when you are in Rome, do like the Romans do. If anyone wants to be among their own community to feel comfortable, they should stay where they come from. Yes, Henry. I do agree with that. Uh, but I also agree with that when you come to a different place, I mean, we still have American friends or U.S. friends from the United States and Canada and different places. And we have friends from all over the world. But I think that for some people, maybe the adjustment might be easier if they're around other people from their country. There's nothing wrong with that. I don't see it, there's anything wrong with that. But what I do see wrong with that is the inability to get outside. They put themselves in a bubble, and I don't want to leave the bubble. The people that are willing to put themselves in the bubble and leave the bubble every once in a while and leave the bubble a little bit more often, or maybe even leave the bubble altogether, those are the people that are going to succeed here in Mexico. The people that stay in the bubble, they're the ones that are going to go home. Actually, Henry, they actually write their own ticket back home. And if they can't write their own ticket back home because they can't afford to go back home, then they're going to be miserable the rest of their lives here. And there's no reason to be miserable. We only have a short period of time in this world. I learned this. I almost died of cancer. So, I know what it's like to face death. And you start to realize that you don't have a lot of time on this world. So why spend it being miserable? If this is the card you were dealt and you can't move back to your own country because of whatever reason, then make the best of it. That's what I'm trying to say. Have fun. Because the only thing you die with, you don't take any of your material possessions with you. All you take with you is your experiences. And the only thing you leave behind is memories for the people that your loved ones and the people that you dealt with. So leave some good memories with all of the people, local people, your friends. That's what it comes down to. I never see a local get mad and yell at somebody. Yes, you know what? You have a good point, Quebec woodcraft, and I'll tell you why. Because it's part of the Mexican culture. It's part of the Mexican. It's part of the Mexican culture to be respectful, and it's very important that we be respectful of one another, and you'll find that Mexicans are that way. It's not about them letting you run over them. It's not about them letting you run over them. It's not about them being bad or whatever. It's all about respect, is what I guess I'm trying to say. And the Mexican people have I'll tell you what, have a lot better grasp on respect. The dynamism of tourism in Mexico is not or predominantly dependent on visitors from abroad. Between 85 to 80% of every 100 pesos spent on tourism sector comes from domestic tourism. Yes, actually that's the truth. And I want to make that point that even in tourist areas, the U.S. or Canada or foreign tourists aren't what make up the tourism. Let me put it this way: if foreign tourists were restricted from coming to Mexico, guess what? Cancun wouldn't suffer. A lot of tourist destinations would not suffer. As a matter of fact, there's a lot of tourist destinations that even foreigners don't go to here. That usually the biggest tourism is in the Riviera Maya area, but there's places like Puebla where they have there's a lot of tourism there, where the pyramids. Jay Gomez. I really like to hear when Mexico raises the minimum amount of income you need to get resident. They already are. Actually, believe it or not, it's this is a great filter. That's what's happening right now with the minimum wage. What I was talking about it. Adrian, speaking of economic solvency, there are a lot of people claiming that you only need to prove solvency once. I had to prove solvency upon renewal. The person at immigration can make up their own requirement. Actually, Adrian, that's something that, let me tell you what, you don't really have to show economic solvency when you renew. They will still ask you for bank statements. But I've checked around. This is something new that immigration is doing. I think immigration just wants to make sure you still have money. But there's no actual requirement. I mean, they'll tell you to show them their bank statements, but nobody that I know of, and I have not been able to see one single case where they haven't renewed because you didn't meet the requirements. They will make you show, and when you still have to show it because immigration can tell you to produce whatever documentation. You got to remember you're in a different country, and immigration is what the rules of immigration. If they require you to, I don't know, give you their last electric bill, you have to give them the electric bill. But they are doing that. They are requiring bank statements, but there is no quote solvency requirements that supposedly someone's been denied their renewal because of that. Just to let everybody know, that is something new immigration is doing, but unless it changes. And now the other thing to note is that the financial solvency requirements for immigration are a lot lower than the consulates, but it's really weird because you have to get through the consulate to get to immigration. So let me see here. 900 pesos. Yeah, actually, Baja Azul is a little bit more expensive, but look at the cost of living in Baja Azul. A construction worker here makes 500 to 600 pesos. A skilled worker makes 600. Just a regular bricklayer or whatever makes about 400 here in San Miguel de Allende. So it's a big difference. But you also got to remember, it also has to do with the cost of living in the different places. So yes, Mexico Adventure, we do the same thing. We pay our maintenance guy $2,000 a week. That's 120 US dollars per week. But we really take care of him. His wife cleans for us, 500 pesos for 6 hours. That's exactly what we do. Buy carnitas. Actually our people that work with us, we feed them everything else. You know what? You treat your people well, and it doesn't matter. I mean, even if you're, I always have been of this. Even when I was a boss in my agency, I always thought you always take care of your people. If you take care of your people will take care of you. So that's a very good thing to do, and I think you know that's very commendable. No home training. I agree. People can be extremely fresh in how they speak. Yes, I have to agree. I can't stand Facebook groups locally, but I try to use it for event planning. Respectful behavior on Facebook is sorely lacking. Yes, I agree that too. Hey, Lambden, uh, welcome. um, Mel Larkey. I lived in Mexican village, only English speaker there. So I learned the language in 6 months. That's the best way to learn. I'll tell you what, that's why I learned Portuguese in Brazil, by speaking it every day. And even to my local staff, I spoke Portuguese. And that's the way to learn, man. Kai, yeah, you were not asked for financials probably when I renewed for temporary residency in Ciudad Mex in September. it's only a handful of offices that are doing this. One thing that everybody needs to understand is each immigration is different. Each immigration office operates differently. Requirements may be a little bit different. I have heard about this financial, Adrian, if you want to tell us where you're coming from, where they required that, but I do know several immigration offices are asking for your bank statements, but they just look at them and say, oh, okay, thank you very much. And then it goes away. So Mexico City is probably one of those that doesn't. I don't know which ones do, to be honest with you. But like I said, nobody's ever not been renewed. And so, and then, so that's why you probably didn't get asked for your financials. And there's no requirement to show financials. I just think that's at some immigrant, even with the regularization program. When I talk about the regularization program, there's even different, some you have to have a 180-day expired visa, some you can come on a regular expired visa, some it's an entry before 2021, others before 2023, or others you had to have entered, your visa had to have entered in 2022. So there's different, each office is different, is my point. Let me see here. Debbie, hola, I would not attempt to do anything immigration wise without a Mexican attorney who is wonderful. Um, and then, actually, Adrian, uh, this is one of the things, Debbie, that I do say to use a facilitator. The only thing is, don't mistake facilitators with attorneys. Not every facilitator is an attorney. You don't need, in order to work with immigration processes, you do not need to be an attorney. Now, I do know some of the best facilitators that help you with the immigration process are not attorneys. Um, and so being an attorney here in Mexico doesn't make a better facilitator. Some facilitators are attorneys, which is good. But what it is the best thing is to find a good facilitator, is what we call them. They're not actually, they might call themselves licenciado. Licenciado, here in a term, we always used to think licenciado meant attorney. It doesn't mean attorney. Yeah, an attorney is called licenciado or abogado. But licenciado could mean you graduated with an accounting degree. It's basically your career here in Mexico. So even when someone says licenciada or licenciado or whatever, I help in immigration, a lot of people see that, oh, licenciado, licensed attorney. Not necessarily. Licenciado is just a title that they finish college, basically. If you're an engineer you finish with an engineering degree, you're an ingeniero. Like I would be an ingeniero, the title ingeniero. My wife is licenciada, and actually she was a teacher, so she's maestra. So at one point. So it just depends. So but the important part is finding a good facilitator, because not all facilitators are bad. I'm just saying, just because you're not an attorney doesn't mean you're a bad facilitator. Some of the best I know that aren't. Okay, Adrian with the answer. I renewed in Nueva León. Yeah, actually Nueva León, they asked for 3 months of statements. I don't know what would have happened had I not had enough money in the account, but they do ask for statements. Yes, Adrian. Actually, Nueva León's a little bit different. I went through the immigration process there in Nueva León. I didn't, well, when I renewed this, this new thing wasn't going on. But Nueva León is a kind of a different animal. And Nueva León's dealing with a lot of not just people applying for residency, but a lot of humanitarian visas, a lot of Cubans, a lot of South Americans, Central Americans, Haitians. So I think that's probably why that's one of the offices that's asking for it. But I think they just want to make sure that there's no rhyme and reason to it, because I've talked to several people that facilitators and people that deal with clients every day and said, I don't know. We just showed them the bank statements. They didn't ask any questions, and it didn't matter how much they had in the bank. They just took the bank statements. I don't know for what reason, but that's just what happened. And so Sometimes things don't make sense, but uh, Mexico Adventure, have a great time at church, and we'll see you soon. Oh, I realized that as soon as I posted. Yeah, well, Debbie, I think what you were trying to say was a facilitator. That's basically uh, what you were trying to get across. Um, I just wanted to reinforce that. And CMT 63. We had been friends with others who moved here about the same time we did. Some have repeatedly said offensive things, and we are not close now. Calling yourself a rich gringo is gross. Yeah, that's not right. It's not right. Malarkey, we used to facilitate her. Happy we did. She made everything in it. Actually, let me tell you something. I didn't use a facilitator the first time, and I had to go back and forth to the immigration office like 7 times. We speak the language. I never had the right documentations, and but this was back 6 years ago when I first did it. And then not only that, it took me 8 months to get my card. And we used to see these people that used to walk up with a stack of files, which were the facilitators, and go in front of us in the line and everything else. And when I went to renew my, it's a long story. I think I've told this story 20 million times, but when I went to renew my temporary residency for the second year so that I could go to permanent because I'm married to a Mexican, I didn't know I could apply for, and here's the thing, I didn't even know I could apply for my 2 years up the bat since I'm married to a Mexican. So I applied for the 1 year, not knowing any better. Long story short, if I would have used a facilitator to begin with, I wouldn't have been in that position. But the second time I used a facilitator, and I also used a facilitator for my permanent residency. And it was well worth the money because I didn't have to wait in line. The facilitator did all the work, told me when to show up. By the time I was getting my permanent residency, they already had the computer systems where you just do your fingerprint. The first time I had to do my fingerprints on a piece of paper and sign a piece of paper 3 times. But by that time, oh, I switched back on accident here. Let me go back. Uh, oh, actually, look, the sun has changed on my view here. My camera's still working. That's good to know, actually. Nerduno. Yeah, Nerduno. When I went to get my PR, I saw a facilitator helping some Chinese immigrants and speaking fluent Chinese. Actually, there's a lot of Koreans, nerd, and there's a lot of Chinese coming. The reason why um, is that um, now my cities are a lot of Chinese stores selling cheap stuff from China. Yeah. Um, what you're going to find too, also, nerd, is there's a big Chinese community coming here because a lot of Chinese companies, because of trade embargoes, you got to remember, and this goes into another thing about what I talk about nearshoring. And a lot of Chinese companies are starting to put their companies and their factories here in Mexico. Oh, have a great day. Heading to Haiti to bring cookies for a donation. Great. Thank you. And actually, I'm up to my 1 hour here, so I'm going to cut off here. But yeah, there's a lot of Chinese companies. I even was talking about Foxconn, the ones that make the iPhone, literally manufacture iPhone, is looking at putting a factory here in Mexico. Tesla has also done it, but Kia, there's a very large Oriental community in Nuevo Leon and Querétaro because of that, and Foxconn is looking at putting it built. It's actually cheaper for them to build iPhones here in Mexico with the free trade. So, um, that's something that's a trend that's happening. So you're going to see a lot more people from China, Korea, and those areas. Probably a lot. What you're seeing is well, and Chinese are very. They start a lot of businesses back in the United States. There's a lot of these little stores, dollar stores, and stuff like that. But a lot of these people are coming here because they're probably coming here with family and everything else for a lot of other companies that are here. Um, that are building cars and building different factories that are relocating here because it's cheaper than sending products over. So, um, one thing I want to wrap up with, and let me know if you like this better, because I'm always doing this at 6 o'clock at night, but it's kind of started to interfere with my schedule here. So if it's better that I do it now at noontime, let me know. I do know that there's football going on. Well, football season is going to end pretty soon, but I know that there's a lot of stuff going on, and I only try to take an hour. I took an hour and 20 minutes this time, but I only try to take an hour. So let me know if this is a better time. I'm just experimenting with different times. Thank you for helping me test out my camera there. One more last, let me switch to my camera one last time. That's where that's my view out my back. And hopefully I'm going to try to put one on my roof before. And you guys have a good time. Thank you for joining me. And like I said, I wanted to address this topic, and I hope that people have a better understanding. And I hope that people can understand each other. And it's about being respectful to the culture, but it's also about being respectful to each other. And that's what's the most important thing in all of this is, you're living in a different country. Everything from the culture to even the people that may even be from your own country are going to be different. So embrace that difference and make it a fun and have fun. Make this a place that you call home. That's the most important part, is love where you live. And if you love where you live and you love what you do, then it's not work. And there's no reason to be miserable here. No reason. So until next time, like I always say, stay safe and stay informed. And thank you. Thank you for being the great community that you are. Until next time, see you soon.